They should have said the poet. The poet. They should have said the poet. The poet.
This is Sending Poets, a podcast about ideas. Our goal is to understand metaphorical truths within the beauty we find in the human experience. Sending Poets.
What do The Abyss, The Cable Guy, and Fight Club all have in common? Well, we're going to find out. My name is John. With me is Bob and Tucker. Good morning, you guys.
Morning,
Hey,
guys.
what's up?
We are going to start what will surely be another many-part series, movies that depict the metaphor of duality of mind. So whether or not this is a concentric series of episodes or we come back here and there, we're not sure yet, but this is something we've been excited to talk about. There's a long list of movies we have that all kind of have this metaphor at their core. So we're picking these three to start with. I mentioned at the end of the last episode, I thought maybe there was a fun tie-in maybe between sleep, the topic of sleep and dreams, and The Abyss. And maybe there is, but clearer heads prevailed, and obviously Fight Club is the better tie-in with sleep because it's about this guy that has insomnia. So we're going to start with Fight Club. So again, the idea is like we're going to focus on these themes of duality of mind, but because we just talked about sleep, I think that'll come in here and there too. So with Fight Club, I guess we'll just start real quick. This came out in 1999. It stars Brad Pitt, Edward Norton. It was directed by David Fincher, who's a fantastic director and has done amazing movies. But this is based on the book written by Chuck Palahniuk, and he's written some really great stuff too. So a lot of great stuff going for this. But yeah, so that's just some quick background. But where do we want to start with the theme of duality of mind in this movie?
I don't know. I kind of had the idea earlier when we were talking that, because he can't sleep, so there's never a time where his consciousness gets to take a break and just let the subconscious play with the brain for 8 hours a night. And maybe something snaps in him where eventually the subconscious just takes over. And
completely.
Completely. He's
Like
not
the
conscious. He's not a conscious actor in his own life anymore. He's just Maggie took the wheel. He's almost let the subconscious narrate itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe it's maybe that's the way to describe it, is like the conscious mind just disappears entirely, right? Because of the insomnia. By the way, the character doesn't have a name. He's the narrator.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a clue that the
That's the
conscious
first-
mind isn't supposed to be there anyway. Like the whole point is this is just his subconscious, which is in control anyway, but there is a relationship between subconscious and conscious with the normal experience. I guess we could say the typical experience. There's some relationship between the two, and I think what you're saying, Tucker, is this story is about where the conscious mind just completely disappears, and it's just not in that relationship at all. It's completely one-sided. Is that fair? Maybe?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, we've talked about this before. It's like if you look at evolution of of life on Earth, predators have forward-facing eyes. Humans are predators on Earth, and we are the absolute super predator. We need the conscious decision-making sides of ourselves to rein that in. Because if we didn't, there wouldn't be an animal or a blade of grass left on this planet. If we just let the super predator brain drive, we would have destroyed everything already. And we're on our way to doing that, even letting consciousness into the equation. But I think we've tamed it a little bit. That ability to think about the consequences of actions before we do them instead of just relying on instinct.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point of view. And let me ask you, Tucker and John, I think they get to that in Fight Club in the very beginning where it starts with being jet lagged. My point being the art and the IKEA stuff and building out your apartment with a catalog. And the point being like the artificial nature of modernity as it pertains to consciousness versus, the legacy of evolution and geological time and whatever you want to call our deep ancestry of predator nature. Meaning it feels some kind of way to be tired, but it's totally different and artificial to fly from the West Coast to the East Coast and have your time be completely different. It's unnatural is my point. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
and so we're dealing with this unnatural nature coupled with the sleep-wake cycle, coupled with consciousness and subconsciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
As it's like a trigger of this is not right. So going back to this concept, Tucker, of we are predatory and we're super predators on this planet, but we're also artificially constraining ourselves for the good, because if we're all just law of the jungle in each other, we're not going to get very far. But there's something there. There's something about we are this animal, but we wear clothes. We're this animal, but we're fly airplanes. And I think single serving portions was a big thing, right? Like individualized. Back in Fight Club, right? They talked about.
You're the most interesting single serving friend I've met, or something.
Exactly.
He's like, oh yeah, no, that's very clever. I get it. How's that working out for you, or whatever he says to him?
That's the start of it. So
yeah, right.
Tyler and IKEA boy or the narrator meet each other on the plane for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Oh yeah. So spoiler, we can't really talk about this without spoilers. Like they're the same, character. Like Tyler Durden shows up and he's like really slick and smooth talking and stuff, but he is the narrator. He's the subconscious. He represents the subconscious of the narrator, right? And the narrator, fittingly is called the narrator because he's the conscious mind narrating what's happening. Yes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
so
he's like a layer on top, meaning he disappears for much of the movie before you realize what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And Tyler, the real person, the subconscious layer, is doing a bunch of things behind the scenes, like having relationships,
right.
having a business, buying things, planning things,
recruiting followers.
Totally. And so the only time you really see them is during the Fight Club moments and a couple weird moments like in the house when he's transitioning between, who's with the girlfriend.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting scene. I'll get you guys' point of view on this, where there's like a switch that gets flipped, and it's where, what was the girlfriend's name? I can't remember.
Marla.
Thank you. Marla calls the house, and narrator answers, and she starts talking about, I'm going to kill myself. I took a bunch of pills, whatever. And Ed Norton is like, yeah, right. Doesn't hang up on her, but he puts the phone up on the receiver.
Yeah.
Walks away. Tyler Durden comes in and picks it up. And that's when you start getting this major shift.
That's true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
more, and then more and more, sorry, John, more and more that the insomnia, he kind of goes into these blackouts where he doesn't realize what is happening between these, like he finally sleeps, quote unquote, but he doesn't know what's happening after the fact. And at the end, we find out, like you're saying, that all the recruiting and planning and all this stuff is going on while the narrator sleeps.
Well,
Yeah.
the narrator, like, quote, sleeps, right?
Yeah.
Well, the narrator thinks that he was asleep.
Well, he is in that.
Oh, he's like sleepwalking. Maybe.
Sleepwalking, exactly. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I was going to go with it. Back to the tie-in of the very first podcast of the Sleep series,
Yeah.
where there was that guy who sleptwalked and killed his in-laws or whatever, stabbed them. And
Yeah.
I mean, when you're very tired, the point is the real life guy was having sleep disorders, and he was sleepwalking, and you could do some, you could like drive a car, stab people, go into houses. I mean, there's an amazing level of functionality capable in a non-conscious state, which is quite profound. But I think that's really what this is about, is, diving deeply into the pool of unconsciousness and what can be done there to really find out what layer is which, what's built on what. So most people, I think, would think that the conscious layer is the foundation, and then your subconscious is kind of peripheral. Whereas this movie, in my opinion, is the foundation level is the subconscious, unconscious. And then the top layer that floats on that is the narrative conscious layer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that movie's a exploration of what happens when that conscious layer goes away and all the subconscious starts telling its own stories,
Oof.
building its own armies,
Oof. That's
taking
good.
down the American credit system.
Project Mayhem, right?
Yeah, Project Mayhem, right? Yeah, that was the whole thing. It's just like, just destroy it all.
But
Which
let's say
is,
this, though.
I think it speaks to the predatory nature. It's, he felt like he was being dominated by this external force and he was going to destroy it.
But it wasn't just any external force. It was a superficial external force. It was the single serving life. It was the insurance agent that is documenting the death of a family, but they're going to just write it off instead of doing a recall because there's a formula that calculates which one is more cost efficient.
Yeah, it'll cost more money to maybe do the right thing or the
Correct.
moral thing.
Correct.
Profit is the bottom line. And that, so yeah, no wonder he's like, yeah, just destroy it all.
That's my point, is that there was, so even though it's like this predatory thing, to Tucker's point, it's like this bestial, primal layer of thing, it's trying to achieve a goal. Like there's a strategy here. There's a pattern recognized, which is all of the superficiality and lack of genuine relationships, lack of, meaning. I mean, he has the best time doing what? Like hitting golf balls in some deserted industrial area while drinking beer with his subconscious. You know what I mean? Like that's the good stuff. Beating each other to bloody pulps in a basement or a parking lot. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, being unable to ask. So it all starts with, in the parking lot, just ask, man. Just ask. Okay, so they're in the airplane. Tyler gives his business card to the narrator. The narrator's apartment blows up. He has no place to go.
Right.
He goes to a payphone, calls Tyler. Hey, you want to go grab a beer? Yeah, they go grab a beer. They play some pool, shoot the shit, and then they're in the parking lot. And he can't say goodbye. He's struggling.
Yeah.
And he's this awkward moment. Like he's had his first genuine relationship, this first non-superficial relationship, but he can't say the words. And Tyler's just like, just fucking ask, man.
Yeah.
Just fucking ask. So I think like there's this very primal nature about connecting to the non-superficial level. So if we want to talk about the veneer, the the shiny surface, but underneath it's hollow inside. There's no depth in there. So Tyler's all this depth, and then the conscious narrator is just this shiny fake. Like it's about fake. It's about being fake versus like something real.
Yeah.
It's do you know you could still live like an animal? That you could strip away this whole veneer of modern bullshit and be an animal on this planet and actually enjoy it.
How about, do you know you are still an animal?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
Exactly.
Is the question he asks is literally in the movie, it's like, can I stay at your place, right? Because like you said, his apartment burned, he doesn't have a place to go, right?
Yes, but he doesn't ask it right away. He can't. He's literally stuck. He can't say the
Yeah.
words.
But do you
no-
think like the meaning behind the question
Oh.
is like, is Tyler saying like, just ask me to take over, just
Yes,
ask
exactly,
me to
John.
like
Exactly. Let it go.
just
Let
yeah.
go of the illusion
Wow.
And let me drive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the whole point. And once he makes that turn, shit starts getting weird for a period of time.
Yeah, and that's how it ends. He's like, he tells Marla like, you met me at a very strange time in my life or whatever, because like, yeah, after in that parking lot scene, that's one of the first things Tyler does. I think it's after he asks him, if we can stay with him or whatever. But isn't that he like, hit me, like, just punch me.
That's when it starts. That's exactly when it starts.
Yeah.
But
And then there's a great shot. There's a great shot too later that in his recollection where he's realizing, because I should have said this, I guess, but it's not obvious. You think these are two actual, different characters, and it's shot so well and it's edited so well that like it's totally believable as the viewer, like, oh yeah, these are two unique people. Then when the reveal happens later, it's like, oh, it wasn't. The Tyler Durden was just a figment of his imagination. He didn't actually exist.
Yeah.
He's talking to himself. He's beating himself up in that parking lot. There's a real, quick shot where it's like they show him kicking his own ass or whatever in the parking lot, because that's what's actually happening. So yeah, but anyway, keep going.
Well, there was something I was going to say, but before I divert, I think there's a very interesting moment when the Jared Leto character gets just fucked up. Do you remember that, where he gets fucked up? And so in the beginning, it's Tyler Durden is, which is obviously Ed Norton. They're both the same guy, but Tyler Durden is showing affection for the Jared Leto guy. And then the Ed Norton guy decides he's going to pick that guy to fight tonight.
Yeah.
And he fucks him up. And then afterwards, Tyler Durden and Ed Norton, which I'm interchanging the character and the actor's name, so it's a little awkward, but you know what I'm saying? Brad Pitt and Edward Norton are talking.
Yeah.
He's like, "Where did you go, psycho boy?"
Yeah, right. He does say that, doesn't he?
He fucked him up. And so there's like this weird interplay there. I love that. But here's what I was going to get to, back to the sleep. Do you guys remember what it was in the very beginning that Ed Norton had to do to sleep?
He had to go to the, what are they called, the recovery groups.
Yep.
And cry, basically.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But so I was gonna speak to that too, because it's the prior to Tyler Durden, it's him being so miserable with his own life that he's got to go pretend to be somebody else.
I would say he has to feel something, but I think you're right. That both are true, but I would say he doesn't feel anything. The consciousness has no feeling. It's just a stream of words. And the only way he can drop into sleep is to go experience real feelings, non-superficial, non-bullshit. People are dying. People have been raped. People have been, stricken with cancer, and they're about to, all these terrible things, right? All these terrible maladies and experiences. It's real.
Right.
And so he finds Marla, and she's there as a faker.
Doing the same thing.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They're both fakers.
Yeah.
But they're both faking one thing, which is to be around people who are being real.
Yeah. Are they like absorbing the realness somehow, like living
They're both
vicariously, maybe?
they're both sick. They're sick of the pervasive consciousness layer, the narration layer, not the actual substance. So you get to like this territory and map. Probably talked about this. So territory is the real thing, and the map is an abstraction of the territory. And you can use them both. They're very valuable. It's like, what's more important? Like if you want to go somewhere, you want to go to the territory, but you need an abstraction to get there, like the map. And so I often use the metaphor of jumping out of an airplane, meaning which is more important, the parachute or the ripcord? You know, like you kind of need both.
Yeah.
So they're in this world that we do exist as modern animals, if you will, requiring both layers. You need to have something real, the feeling level, the genuine nature, the guys hugging because they're crying because they have testicular cancer layer, right? When he meets Bob,
Yeah.
Robert Paulson.
Robert Paulson, brilliantly portrayed by Meatloaf.
Love it, dude. You crushed it, obviously. But his name is Robert Paulson, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But my point is the tension is between having this layer of abstraction, the map, and having the reality of the thing, the territory. And this is the gift or curse that humanity has, is that we're navigating these two worlds, whereas pretty much every other creature on this planet is navigating in one, the territory. They just navigate the territory. We have this map level, and that's our gift and our curse. We are the hyper dominant, back to Tucker's point. Like, if we wanted to predate on everything, we could absolutely do that. But we don't. We're trying to navigate this thing with an abstraction, artificial layer. And what happens, though, if you go too far in that direction? What happens when you go too far to the abstract layer, where life is a catalog and you're just trying to fill your apartment with stuff, and you just want single serving meals, and you're flying from coast to coast, and time doesn't even mean anything anymore, because when you start in one place and it's daylight, and you get to the next place and it's 10:30 at night, that's not natural. It feels weird. You get jet lag, but you have to go to this meeting. And what's the meeting about? It's about insurance, and like all this crazy tension between just hitting golf balls in a empty industrial park, drinking beers, beating the shit out of each other, crying is a big thing,
right?
Versus being a quote unquote normal person with an office job, doing. Well, here's the ultimate goal. I can't believe I didn't bring this up already. I'm so sorry. In the airplane, Tyler pulls out the safety card. Like, look at these guys. These are little picture people, not real people. These are little picture people about what to do when the plane's going down. You guys remember this?
Yeah.
When the plane's going, look at their smiling faces as they're taking pure oxygen, giant gulping breaths. And they're like little cows, just waiting to be slaughtered. And you think you're bending over and holding your knees is going to help you hit the water at 500 miles an hour. All this stuff. Like, that's the whole point. The safety card, is just abstraction for life. The reality is being terrified out of your fucking mind because you're about to hit the water at 500 miles an hour. So that's where we're at. My point is, the movie is about being in this gray zone between you are an animal and the pretend zone, but it's not like it's without merit. It definitely helps us of being at the map level. So there's territory.
There's utility there. Yeah.
Totally.
Is this a good spot for the Hamlet quote?
Yes.
So the famous, to be or not to be, but I'm going to read, and the whole thing I think is quite long, but there's this snippet here Bob pulled out that I'll read here. So to be or not to be, that is the question. By the way, this is like pressure, right? I mean, how many people have read this quote?
Come on,
and
you're the best. You're the very best.
I'm the best. Okay.
The best of the three. You're the best of all of us.
I don't know about that, but I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. I don't think I can do the English accent, so I won't even try. Anyway, whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks.
Brilliant. Bravo.
And Shakespeare's like 1400s, right? 1500s, something.
Something like that. 16, 14, something.
Maybe 16.
Maybe 15. I don't know. Somewhere in that ballpark. But it was.
Sometimes that stuff blows me away that like people are that thoughtful and deep with words that long ago. You know, I
Wasn't
mean,
he
even
like I think they say he was an alien or something, or a time
oh,
traveler. Or
I don't know if I'd heard that.
1600s.
1600s. All right,
Yeah.
thank you. I hadn't heard that, but I had heard, you know, that maybe he didn't actually write all the stuff he said he did, that there was somebody behind the scenes that was doing more of the writing and he was more of the figurehead.
That
But
guy was the alien. So somebody
that guy was
there's
the alien.
too,
Yeah.
too much genius in one package. But before
But anyway,
we go too off topic, because I think this is going to be this is probably the most dense of the three we'll talk about. It's just so chock full. Let me ask you guys, how impactful to your understanding of this duality of mind is the fact that Tyler's the projectionist?
well, I will say that you know, without, or before you shared your thoughts about this, because when you say the projectionist, let's just be clear here. It's that scene where he's doing the film reel switchover or whatever in a theater, but he splices in a single frame from like a porno, you know, in like a kids movie or whatever. So my I didn't. I remember all my viewings until I talked to you about it. I think I just didn't even bother trying to figure out if there was meaning behind that. I was just like, oh, haha, that's funny. There's a dick shot there, like, haha, and that was it. So prior to that, yeah. Anyway, so Tucker, do you remember thinking anything deep and metaphorical in that scene?
You know, when I was really into that movie in my early 20s, I was not nearly as far as I am on my conscious journey with the brain. And I think I took more of the message from it that it was just this fake veneer that we have built on society is bullshit. And that was kind of more the message I got out of it.
Mm.
So exploring it like from higher level view in my 40s and having discussed the things we have, it's the throwing the still of the porno into the kids movies is it's just pointing out how you can be influenced by something that you're not even consciously able to perceive. Like that frame goes by so quick, you never even see it.
Right.
But your brain did.
Yeah.
Your
They
brain
show
did.
the crowd. They show the crowd kind of like, I
Huh?
think there's like a parent that's like, what was that? You know, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I mean that there's so much information being pumped into your brain every single second through your five senses that you can't even perceive it all. But it does influence you.
Yeah, and that's your point too, right, Bob? I mean, like Tyler's a subconscious and he's giving you, but I think you have an additional angle on that, don't you? Like with the signal, basically, right?
Yeah. So my take, of course, I think to the point of it's intentional to use a explicit clip of genitalia in a kids movie. In that he's trying to make a point of they didn't really they know something's up. The audience, they can't put their finger on it. Like they can't describe because it's so quick. Like Tucker's saying, it's one frame out of 24 per second or whatever. But it's in there now. It's I got inside their heads. It's subliminal. It's some kind of a unconscious awareness of the signal, even though they have all they know is something's a little bit off. Like it doesn't feel right. So I think that's indicative of what the movie's about. Meaning, they're not trying to subconsciously do a charity like Red Cross or something. I mean, they're Project Mayhem. There's this layer of what do you want, subversion, if you will. But my point of view is, at the decision making level, the decision maker is the subconscious, and the subconscious is going to make a decision to do a thing, and then it's going to transmit information along an emotional layer to the consciousness to inform it of what the decision is. The action takes place, then the consciousness narrates why they did that thing. But the trick is the consciousness thinks they have free will and that they decided. But the decision had already been made at the point of splicing in the dick pic or whatever. That was the push. That was the pull. That was the point of the projectionist is making the decision for you. And then it's giving you this little tiny snippet, this little emotion, this little feeling that you don't even perceive. And because you don't perceive it explicitly, once you're already moving left or right or whatever direction you've been pushed or pulled to go in, you define it as it was your choice, meaning consciously. You think the audience now is choosing to say, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. But it's not really a choice, is my point. You're just making an excuse or a reason or whatever you want to call it, narration of what happened already after the fact. But it reinforces your concept of you're in a free will environment. And second order concept is the little dick pic. It is just like that, but it's a metaphor. So whatever you want to compress and encrypt as far as information, your subconscious is using this story, this like Fight Club itself. So let's say I'm going to have a conversation with you. We're sitting at a bar and we're talking about sports, and then we're talking about kids, and then we're talking about politics, and then we're talking about consciousness. This movie or a segment of this movie will flash into my consciousness like a daydream. I will literally see a tiny little representation of an idea. And I think we all do. You just have to kind of pay attention to it. It's hard to see it at first. Once you start seeing it, it's everywhere. To realize that, just like Sam Harris is talking about, when you want to find a movie to watch, what is literally happening is some little carousel of movies is popping up in your mind's eye, if you will. We're talking about I'm not talking literally, obviously. We're not talking it's literally showing up in the world. But in a virtual image that we are perceiving consciously of a vision or a dream, if you will, of a movie. And it's going to pop into my mind's eye because I don't have a catalog of all the movies I know of consciously in my head at all times. I have very little working memory. I can hold 5 things, let's just say, in my working memory all day long. And when I want to pick up another idea, I have to put one down. So I can remember, say, on a random deck of cards, I can remember 5 cards in a row. Probably, maybe 7. But after a while, I'm going to forget the order of these things because they're random. They have no association. Or they're very voluminous and like every movie I've ever seen. But if you and I sit down and say, hey, let's watch a movie. What do you want to watch? Dune? You want to watch that? No, I just watched that. Groundhog Day. Yeah, let's watch that. My point is, I don't have these things stacked up in my consciousness. I literally see a little representation of each movie that I'm about to speak, and it floats to the surface.
And the subconscious gave it to you, right?
Correct. That's exactly it. So the projectionist is slicing in 1 or 2 frames per 24 per second. And if your frame rate, this is a key concept, your frame rate has to be fast enough to perceive this is happening. If it is not fast enough, it still happens, but you just don't even know it's happening. It's like literally impossible to see truly the idea come to your conscious layer. It's completely subliminal. So you have to have a frame rate fast enough to be able to detect this thing is happening. It's always going to happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying the detection level is a function of your conscious frame rate, which you can improve if you are looking for it, or if you start feeling this thing happening, you can look for it.
Can you
But that,
can you elaborate more on the speed thing? Because I think I'm maybe thinking of it differently. That if it was going to frame rate, I think doesn't necessarily translate directly to speed, right? Because I'm
so
thinking like,
perception, so awareness that it is actually happening. So let's just say most people are distracted with other conscious thoughts. Like you're watching the movie, but you're also eating popcorn. You know, maybe you're giggling with your friend next to you. Maybe someone's kicking your seat behind you. You know, maybe you see the exit light to the
yeah,
side of the screen. So you're all divided up. So you're not actually really focusing frame rate. By frame rate, I'm talking, let's say it is 1 frame per 24. So Tyler Durden cuts in 1 frame every 24 frames, and 24 frames play each second. I'm saying if your consciousness is locked in at 100 frames a second, it's like it's now playing at 4 times the length of time to your awareness. So instead of 24 seconds, say 25 seconds. So one frame per 25 frames, and you run 25 frames every second. But if your consciousness is running at a speed of 100 frames per second, that's analogous to 4 frames per second. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
okay. So yeah,
You're
per second, the more of those single frames you're getting, the higher your frame rate, the more of those single frames you're getting per second. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So a high-speed camera slows things down, not by making time go slower. It runs
Which like,
more frames per second.
yeah.
And then
Gotcha.
when you play it back at quote unquote normal speed, everything looks very slow. So what I'm saying as a technique, as you become aware, so let me just say in my life, I was unaware this was happening for most of my life. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying I was not consciously aware. I was fooled into thinking I was making all these choices. It was my idea, mine being conscious me. That it was not given to me by a dark place inside me where the dreams come from and the visions come from. That is what I believe to be true. I thought it was all me. I thought it was my idea.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was the clever one. And I'm saying I'm not. Meaning me, the conscious me, the active narrator. The narrator is not the clever one. The projectionist, if you are clever, is the clever one. Once the narrator becomes aware it's watching the movie and it's being fed a signal, which is a metaphor, it's a compression and encryption of an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And once you can see this thing, you begin to have the conversation. So part of the stress of being a modern human, I feel, is being in a one-way conversation. Your subconscious is giving you all this content, all these feelings, all these ideas, all these pattern recognitions. But your consciousness is just taking and saying, I did that. I don't know if you know that meme. You know that meme where the one guy, the little stick figure, has this little pretty ball and it hands it to the next guy, and the guy looks at the pretty ball and he holds it up and says, I did that.
I mean, I can kind of imagine what it, but I don't think I've seen it. But yeah.
The point is taking credit for somebody else's creation.
Yeah.
And now I know it's all the same person. Don't get me wrong. It's a little bit meta here. We're all talking about our own selves. I'm not talking about a true secondary living creature. It's all us. But when you take advantage of what is created and given to you, you don't learn where the source is at. And so that's what, in my opinion, this projectionist concept is about, is learning where the source is. And here's my point. Once you learn where the source is, not only do you feel differently about it, but number 2, you begin a two-way conversation. Now it's like, oh, that's where my inspiration comes from. That's where the light bulb comes from. That's where the ideas are coming from. It's not about, I don't have to try. It's not about trying hard. It's not about making an effort. I think I mentioned this when we were talking about pulling apart deep meaning on poems and musical metaphors. I never come up with this, or I don't think any human comes up with this consciously. I think the thing pops into your mind as an imagination, as a daydream, if you allow it to. And you take that idea. As soon as you see it, oh yes, it's an aha moment. The whole thing comes to you connected in full fruition. You grab that, you meaning the conscious you. And if you're aware that this is happening, you feel gratitude. Okay, that's where the feeling and the crying comes from. So if you have an inspirational moment, the moment of gratitude where you actually break down, you consciously break down into loss of control of your emotions, and you are just overwhelmed with this warm gratitude feeling such that you're crying. It feels so good in your brain. It feels so good to be that person in that moment. It's like being given a beautiful gift.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't say, I made that, I think the gift will continue. As soon as you say, I made that, it stops. Because now you can't see what the projectionist is showing you, not consciously. And so the projectionist has to turn up the volume, put more frames in, make it louder, make it bigger. And then that intensity becomes uncomfortable or scary or unpleasant or painful. And a lot of my past emotional issues, psychological mental health issues, I feel was my subconscious trying to turn the volume up to 11, trying to force me to eat this thing, force me to swallow it, force me to digest it. When I was just fighting back, thinking it's me, it's my choice. I'm making all these decisions. It's me who's driving. I'm in control. Me, I, me. Ego, ego.
Yeah, right. Ego, right.
And that's why the projectionist thing in the movie is also great, because to me it speaks to a second point, whereas when you work on that conscious observation, when you work on that looking inward, you're going to see a lot of dicks.
That's good.
And that's just, there's a lot of dark truths that are uncomfortable. And
yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys,
that's
because
just part of life.
You're both musicians. Would you say it rings true that when you created the best art, the best music, the best metaphor of what you're feeling or what your thoughts were, that it came not consciously with a lot of effort and work, and you're trying to plan it out, A, then B, then C, then D, but it just comes to you all at once, fulfilled as a stroke of brilliance, as a light bulb moment? What's your true lived experience as far as being a creative artist?
Yeah, I love how it ties in. So it's just like you're saying, like in a conversation with a person, and somebody says something, and this flash comes to you, and it's the projectionist being like, okay, based on the words that came in, from my ears and my model of the world. Oh, hey, here's an idea. Here, go for this. But it's just this brief flash. And being aware of that, there's this like power, and that totally rings true with like the songs we wrote, because all of us would come to practice here, every so often with, here's like 4 or 5 riffs, maybe they were strung together, maybe it was like a whole song, but I want to hear what you think too, Tucker, but I do gravitate towards saying the best stuff. Like you asked, like, what was the best stuff? And I do think the best stuff was when those, singularly constructed songs, patterns, meaning singularly, meaning one person came with it. The best stuff happened when that kind of dissolved in favor of these frames that each person's subconscious was saying, like, hey, you just did that. And that made me think this. What if we try this? And in the moment, and again, all this is great because I think, I like our idea that like there's some Berry Center happening that because of, the physical presence of us together, writing songs and our own, models running real time and hearing something new. Boom, I got this vision. What about this? I had this idea, share this idea. And then inevitably that gives someone else another idea and then another idea. And these, I think the best stuff we wrote was when all of those things were firing and we all just collaborated together real time. We left practice with something that would not have occurred otherwise, because no one person would have come up with that pattern of those riffs. No one person would have thought of all that. It only occurred because we were all working together and sharing and being open and perceiving the projectionist being like, here, what about this idea? What about this idea? And then recognizing it enough to say like, ooh, what about this? That's
Yeah, I
my
mean, I
memory.
can think of a specific song that happened that way, and it would be the main riff for Sarcoma Loam.
Oh yeah.
And when we were first working on that, you played it, and then we came back to practice like the next time, and like I played it, but I didn't play it like you did. And I remember you and I having this conversation like, no, you played it this way. And you're like, no, I played it this way. And then Hammer was like, well, just put the two of them together.
Yes, I know.
And
It was just like,
it
yeah,
made it what it needed to be.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it was beautiful. But for
yeah,
me, I guess like, okay, writing riffs is that is you having a conversation with yourself using a different language, right?
mm-hmm.
It's a way of processing what's in your head in a non-verbal way using just raw sound, right? And great stuff comes out of that. But as you said, John, when you then get together as a group and you're having a conversation with other people using that language, that's when something bigger and better comes out of it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, to me, there's bands who have a singular songwriter or a singular lyricist, and that's just the way it is in that band, and I write all the music, and that's just how our business model is set up. To me, a lot of times it ends up sounding the same over the years. Like, you don't see that growth or
yeah.
evolution as an artist because they're only talking to themselves. They're
It's
not
really,
having that conversation with others.
yeah, it's really impressive when a single songwriter does grow and evolve. But I
Sure.
agree that I think it's rare that that I mean, just think about it logically. Like if a person is in their own echo chamber forever, like by definition, they're not going to do anything different. Why would they? They, keep doing the same thing. And yeah, certainly see that.
Let me see if this rings true to you guys. By the way, I think I just learned a lot just by listening to that real world example. I love this. So now what flashed into my mind was, imagine you have multiple movies playing simultaneously. Let's just say three. And each projectionist is cutting in a frame, talking not to the audience, but to the other projectionists. So they're all cutting in their own frames to have a shared Barry Center dialogue to the shared audience. But it's not at the audience level. They're passively watching or listening or absorbing. But what's happening is each person's or each movie that's being played, the projectionist is cutting in an idea, and then another one responds, and then a third one responds, and it keeps going around and around. But the audience is the one that is quote unquote there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, the audience is observing this thing, but not
Yeah.
participating.
Well, they are participating in that they're perceiving what's happening. But when they perceive, let's say there's three audiences all sharing a common auditorium, and there's three screens. But what I'm saying is the conversation level is really not at the audience.
Mm.
It's at the projectionist level. So the conversation is happening when the projectionist, one person gets, one audience gets this one frame cut in, and they perceive it, and they go with it, and now they introduce an idea to the audience. But the audience idea is absorbed by the projectionist, and so then you get a response image cut in, and on it goes, where it's essentially three projectionists having a conversation or building something.
Yeah, no, I like it because it's you're spreading your ability to influence that way. It's the more artists you have involved, the more impact I think you have on an audience, you know. It's it's the same thing as with music, you know. You're going to learn more from a conversation between three people than you are going to learn listening to a guy talk to himself, I guess.
Yeah, at the creative level. So
Yeah.
yeah, once you are creating new things, having more input from various sources allows you to then recognize more patterns. And then anyway, all of it should digest out to the projectionist queuing you up with more and more new ideas, like all the novelty of ideas and generative side of ideas, just like an AI, like a image generator. Like something comes in, you do a prompt, so your consciousness is creating the prompt, and then your subconsciousness is like the AI coming up with a response to that prompt, and maybe it gives you 6 images that are, you know, outputs to the input of the prompt of whatever that string of things is. And then if you're able to perceive these images, you know, you can see them or hear them or feel them. Now that informs your next round of prompting.
You know, all I know is I stuck my head in the door of my own projectionist, and that motherfucker's cutting in pictures of tacos about every 4 frames, and I just closed the door and walked away. He's doing good work.
Nice.
That's funny. But speaking to that, let's touch on this real quick though. Let's think about obsession and compulsion and addiction. You know, things that humans are constantly fighting with, thinking that they have a free will. All you have to do is stop smoking. All you got to do is stop drinking, man.
Yeah.
All you got to do is stop watching pornography. All you got to do is this or don't do that, or, you know, whatever.
Just don't.
Just don't, or just do, or whatever. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
that couldn't be further from the truth.
Stop,
That is,
don't.
Yeah.
stop and don't. It's absolutely antithetical to the construct of cognition at the human level, meaning you got to get to the projectionist level. We're all talking about the audience. You're just like blaming the audience for what's playing. You're fucking blaming not you guys, obviously, but we're blaming an audience member for what they're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until we realize and understand that to make a true change, lifelong change, breaking cycles, we have to get to the level of the projectionist. And how do we create the next layer? Because let's just be honest, the movie is reality. The movie that we're watching, to digest this metaphor, is the reality we live. But interspliced within all these things is options of what to say next, what to do next, what to feel next. Do I eat this? Do I drink that? Do I smoke this? Do I get up and exercise? Do I sleep in? And by the way, depression. So to me, depression is lack of a projectionist. So when your projectionist just stops sending you little clips of whatever it is, that's my metaphor of depression. And then like a manic state is just your movie disappears and it's all clips. Like you can't you can't stop getting clips. So I've had manic depressive phases. I know how it feels. And that's subjective, obviously. I'm sure other people would have their point of view, but the way it feels to me is I'm watching the movie, and the movie being life. And when I'm in a depressive state, I got no ideas. I got no imagery, no conversation with my subconsciousness. It's just gone. And I don't have any motivation to do anything. I don't have any originality, any creativity. There's no flavor of life. There's no what comes next. It's just I'm passively sitting watching the movie, just sitting there like a lump. And then if I'm on a manic side, I'm just flooded. Like you could have I could be in like a locked room with the lights out, and my brain is going, and I'm seeing movies everywhere, and I'm doing things, and I don't even know where I'm at or what I'm doing. I can't feel the real world anymore. I'm overwhelmed by just clips of projectionist generated content.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah. I'm trying to think because I'm failing on the time check thing. I still think we can cover all three movies. I think I can get through Cable Guy quick, but I'm trying to think like how does this tie into the Abyss? Like at some
So,
point here, does this? I mean, I know there's tie-ins, but like,
well, let's not jump on the scenes. Let's jump on the content. So the content, I'll break it down backwards. The content is, and I'll ask you guys a question to see what your opinion is first before I tell you mine. Let's take three main characters. Let's take Bud, Lindsay, and Coffee.
Oh yeah, by the way, so yeah, we're shifting to the Abyss. So if you haven't seen it, just real quick, it's James Cameron. It's one of his earlier ones, 1989. It's fantastic. It really feels like a sort of precursor to Avatar. It takes place in the ocean. There's some aliens. It's fantastic though. But anyway, okay, yeah. So the three,
Next level CGI, by the way, I agree with that.
yeah, at the time,
Yeah,
sure, yeah, it looks
100%.
really good. Yeah.
So let me ask you guys a survey question here, and I'm going to give you the three answers, and I'll see where you place them. So it's not open ended; it's closed ended question here. Let's say one character represents pure consciousness. One character represents consciousness in a duality, and another character represents subconsciousness in a duality. Meaning, just like Fight Club, let's say two of the characters are effectively the same person, but they're the duality. And then one character is one character, but unbalanced. Is that clear? Should I restate that?
No, I think I got it.
Yeah.
For me, it came to the Coffee, the Navy SEAL. He's the unbalanced, like just subconscious. Bud is the second one you mentioned, and Lindsay is the first one. I forget how you described them. That's kind of where my mind went to. That Lindsay is the yeah. Actually, shit. What was the first two? How did you describe
So
them?
so let's just say there's an unbalanced individual, and yeah, let's all say it's Coffee because that makes sense. But then it's unbalanced as conscious, full conscious, or unbalanced as full subconscious. And then the other two are the duality. So they're essentially one person, metaphorically speaking, two halves of a whole, but one is a consciousness and one is a subconsciousness side.
I think Lindsay's more of the subconscious, maybe, and Bud's the conscious. Maybe that's where I'm thinking.
What do you think, Tucker?
I'm going to sit that one out because I did not have a chance to watch the movie, so I'm not as familiar with it as you guys are.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
yeah, I'll defer to John on that one.
Okay. You got it, I think, just right, except for Coffee. So Coffee would be pure consciousness, and we'll get into my take on that in a second. But
Okay.
let's start with the two halves. So Bud is the consciousness. Lindsay is the subconsciousness. The first scene that we're going to talk about is after they've defeated Coffee in this mini sub battle. Their little mini sub that Lindsay was piloting is leaking. It's wrecked, and the motor stops, so they're stuck on the bottom. They're hundreds of yards away from the main station at the bottom of the ocean, freezing cold, and only Bud's wearing a suit. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So Bud has been rescued by Lindsay. She saves the day by defeating Coffee. And now they're stuck. There's a leak. He's trying to fix it. It's not a fixable leak. They're in an impossible situation. Lindsay figures out by working backwards, there's only one way humanly possible that they're both going to end up into the station. Bud is trying to work forward. He's trying to figure out from this point, from inside this sub, how do I get her into safety? She figures out there's only one way, working backwards, and that is he carries her dead body. But this,
yeah, because it's freezing, it's hypothermia, her blood will like turn to ice. She even says she doesn't necessarily say "let me die." But she does say, I'll go into like hypothermic shock or something, I think. And she's like, you can bring me back. She's like, people have been brought back like 10 to 15 minutes after,
Precisely.
she's
But
like, this will work.
he's working for deductive.
Yeah.
Meaning
He starts to take off the suit. He's like,
he
no,
does.
he's like,
'Cause
I'm screwed. You take the suit.
his way of processing is this, then that, then the next, then the
Right.
next. And what he's trying to achieve is her to be alive.
Mhm.
So once he goes forward in this path deductively and she dies, the game is over. He can't see what comes next. She works backwards, inductively, from the point of view of we both have to be in the base, whatever it's called. What do they call that thing?
Yeah, I can't remember now, but it's this huge, like, it's like a rig, a big like
the rig, the underground.
They're oil drillers. I mean, they're working for a
Explorers.
company.
Yeah, they're underwater explorers. So they have this giant underwater rig, and it's got a giant opening towards the bottom that they can swim up through, etc. It's like a moon opening or whatever, moon door. But the point is, she works backwards from we both have to be in this thing. How can I make that happen? Well, as unpleasant as it sounds and as unlikely as the pattern is, the way it works, meaning he's got the suit on, he's the better swimmer, the water's cold, they have a medical kit over there. All these things line up for one solution, which is she dies and there's a chance to be brought back.
Mm-hmm.
His point of view is, and they have seconds, so it wouldn't have worked even if he wanted it to. He will die, give her the suit, she will make it back. He just wants her to live.
Yeah. Yeah, he just gives up, basically. He's like, but he does say, there's a line where he's like, you're smart, you figure this out. He kind of gives up. He's like, I can't figure this out. And I think it's after she's like, no, keep the suit on, I'll figure something out. But I mean, he does give up, like, yeah, I can't figure this out. Just tell me.
And time is you're right. And time is an issue. So they're in this compressed moment of time where the subconscious is creating recognition of pattern at a parallel fashion, as opposed to a series of decisions. So, the computer metaphor is she's a GPU, he's a CPU.
Mm.
And the ability to, this goes back to point of view. So the point of view from the subconscious is objective, running all things in parallel simultaneously. The point of view of the consciousness is subjective, running in a linear fashion with its own, looking through its own eyes. So she's able to take herself out of the equation, if you will, find a solution where she herself dies, but it is the best solution. So that's a pivotal moment. The flip side is, so that's the power of the subconscious. If you want to talk about pros versus cons, so they are a duality. They're symbolic of a single organism with two formats. So we have this duality of mind. We have the projectionist and we have the audience. The strength of the audience. This is a tough one now. I hope you'll follow me and agree. I don't know. This one's kind of out there, but the consciousness has this special characteristic of when the signal stops, start again. It's very simple, but it's hard to get. When the signal stops, start again. So when you fall into this level of depression, or you fall into this level of it doesn't work, we failed, we hit a dead end, whatever happens, I want another movie. Going back to Free Won't, I want another movie. I want to start again. I want something else. Give me another thing. So it is not the creative side, but it is the decision maker of when I don't agree or I don't want this thing that you gave me, to get another one. And it forces, the consciousness is this level of force, of stubbornness, if you will. I want to do it again. Just give me another movie. Give me another example. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Do it again. Such that the great, obviously in the movie, Bud does not give up when it looks like Lindsay will not be revived. He makes it happen. He keeps on going, even though
there's a moment that he does. It's again, the acting is supreme. I don't want to. I'll have stuff to say about the acting and everything. He does go quickly, like through the other guy puts his hand on his
correct
on his shoulder, and he's like, "She's gone, man. It's over." And he does give up for like 1 or 2 seconds.
When the
And then
signal
he's
stops,
like, and then, yeah.
start again.
But then he's like, no, she has a strong heart. She wants to live. And he
Yeah.
goes back to like zap her again, and he's doing the CPR or CPR. But chest compressions and everything. And
So it's about never giving up. So there's a point of view. So she is figuring out strategically, moving backwards, how to solve a complex problem through pattern recognition. He just knows, I'm going to go forward no matter what. You cannot stop it. And there's this point earlier in the movie when he's upset with her. And they're married. And he throws his ring away.
yeah, in the toilet, which is like one of those, whatever, I
Chemical
don't know what the,
toilet.
chemical,
Chemical
thank
toilet.
you.
He throws
Blue.
his, blue chemical toilet. He throws his ring away. But he
goes back to get it like right away.
goes back to get it. And obviously in this movie, his ring saves him.
Yeah, when the shit is flooding and the doors between compartments are closing to, emergency, right? Keep water from flooding in all over the place. He gets his hand right in the, last second to keep this door from closing, but it stops. It doesn't crush his hand because he's got his ring on.
But he
If he
didn't
wouldn't-
plan it as such. He didn't
No,
plan it.
yeah.
It was a momentary impulse. But my point is this. He doesn't know why. He just knows he's got to go forward in this direction with her. Against all the reason.
Yeah.
There's no reason there. He just has this desire to not break this bond, to do anything. And there's a great power of your consciousness, which is to start again when the signal stops. You cannot be defeated if you keep trying. So no matter how many times they failed as a couple, no matter how many times everything went wrong, he has this moment of truth where he has to decide, either I wear the ring or I throw it away. And even though he does throw it away momentarily, he does retrieve it, and it ends up being the right decision down the line.
Right. Yeah.
But he doesn't have a pattern to go on. He's not creating a solution. He just has this unbreakable force of will, this conscious will of I won't give up. I will never give up. He cannot give up. So he's so powerful in his ability to keep moving forward, no matter what. And then they have coffee.
Can we finish that out with like, do you think she comes back to life because, is he a factor there? I mean, he's the one that doesn't give up. He keeps at the end, like he's screaming. It's like some of the most brilliant acting. It's these moments when I kind of step outside the movie and I think like people were standing around holding boom mics, holding lights, action. People were watching, this happen. He's yelling. He's like, fight. He screams fight like 3 or 4 times. And the last time it's like it's this sound comes out of his mouth, and it's the word fight, but he's so strained. You don't even realize what word he's saying. It's just this weird sound. It's so intense. It's some of the most intense acting I think I've ever seen. And what's so impressive is that Mary, what the shit is her name? Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, I think, right? Yeah. She's laying there pretending to be dead while he's screaming at her. He slaps her face and she's just completely motionless. The makeup is fantastic because she looks like she's frozen solid and just, like dead. And then, it's so well done because like he lets out that last final fight. And it's great because I think a lot of, this isn't the first time, it's not the only time that a movie has had somebody, oh my God, they're dead. Oh, but they came back to life. And it's usually like a cough that happens first. But what happens first here is she blinks very slowly. And this scene is drawn out. I mean, it's like, I didn't time it, but it feels like it's maybe 5 minutes. It's maybe not that long, but it's a long time of they're trying to revive her slowly, one by one. People are like, they give up. She's gone, dude. We tried, but she's gone. She's gone. He, again, momentarily is like, he stops and then just goes back like, nope, she's not gone. And he slaps her. He's like, fight. And then just this subtle, tiny little movement of her eyes blinking. That's some powerful shit, you guys. That's one of like the best acted scenes in any movie I've ever seen. It's massive.
It really is. They put on it. They do it justice. I mean, they went in all in and made it art.
Yeah.
So to that point, John, when your subconscious is no longer speaking to you, you can kind of keep going through the motions. Like you can be walking around every day. You could be putting a smile on your face. You could be going to your job, but you're dead inside. You don't have that spark of generative imagination. You don't have that pattern recognition of what to do next.
Mm.
And it's very symbolic of what would you do to restart that? Like if you knew that thing was inside you and it was dead and you wanted to keep going, what would you do? And he does everything human. He will not give up is my point. There's just nothing. You literally have to you just can't stop the guy. You cannot stop
Yeah.
the desire to keep going but not keep going and realizing the duality where the strength of him is her weakness and the strength of her is his weakness. They only move together as a pair. She is the quote unquote smart one. He is the guy who will never stop. That's the human spirit. That's the duality. So well played, John, to bring that up, because what goes next is Coffee.
Yeah.
So Coffee is this guy who has this mission. He's a military guy. He's got a mission. He's got an order. He's been given an order to do a thing. And it all starts with deception, where they're lying about what they're doing. They come on board. What are they hiding? They're hiding a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
And why are they doing that? Because there's this clever plan to blow up the aliens. Okay.
Clever, fearful, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. but I mean, it's a sneaky plan. It's something that they've come up with consciously.
Yeah.
This goes back to why I think Coffee's a conscious player. Okay. He doesn't ever stop. He will not stop. He will forever keep on going. He's got that stubborn, conscious nature of not ever stopping. But he gets defeated by a higher level strategy. So the Lindsay character defeats him eventually through being smarter, essentially, being able to see the future better than he does. So she gets, without going too deep, she gets her mini sub and beats him with his mini sub, etc. Anyway, but the point is, he is corrupted or corroded internally because he's doing this thing consciously. He's got this singular desire to do this thing, obsessed with completing his mission. And there's a lot of power there and there's strength there, but he's taking his orders or the idea, whatever you want to call it, from somewhere else. So someone outside someone outside the environment that they're in, they're trapped in this thing, gives him an order. Like the order is to do this thing and he will not deviate from it. He'll lie to everybody. He'll deceive. He'll be, kill people that are good people. All these things. He's just like what we'd call quote unquote evil. He's got this pure level of consciousness where he wants his way, and he'll stop at nothing to get it. So it's the embodiment of the Bud side without the Lindsay.
Yeah, I see. I mean, he even says like, because there's a storm, they lose communication with the surface. He says like, we're the last line of defense here. If we don't do this, the aliens are going to take over or whatever. I mean, it's total fear based, but he is like, this is it. I have to do this. And he, there's other Navy SEALs, and I think maybe they're trying to do the Lindsay role. They're trying to like, but he's just not having it. He's like, no, I'm in charge. This is it. I have to, I have to strap this nuke on the little submersible guy and go blow up the aliens and save humanity.
But the unbalance, I think you're exactly right. But the unbalance is what we would call evil.
Mm-hmm.
So the unbalance of having a mission that you don't understand, you're not allowed to question, you can't
Yeah.
problem solve on, but you have I'm just following orders
Yeah, exactly.
mentality,
Yeah.
leads to a series of decisions that, look, he incorporates deception, he incorporates violence, he incorporates all these terrible, terrible things into his solution, just the ends to justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think human society has defined as evil. That is knowingly choosing a path that hurts people, that is justifying things that we know are wrong, like lying. It's a way for the movie to symbolically show that the two halves working together overcome the one dominant side of pure consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it.
And the movie is obviously beyond beautifully acted and scripted and executed. One of my favorite all time, obviously. I highly recommend it.
Me
And,
too.
yeah.
The theme, at the end, I recognized, a similarity with Contact in that, there's aliens, right? But one of the things I really liked about The Abyss is like, in contrast to Contact, the movie, not the book, but in the movie, Jodie Foster's the only one that has the contact with the aliens, right? Everybody's got to take her word for it. But at the end of The Abyss, like the aliens reveal themselves, like all kinds of people see it. It's not just one person that everybody has to have faith in, because I think that's maybe a difference. There's more of a theme of faith in the movie Contact than The Abyss. And what's great about The Abyss is like they're friends, like Bud, they kind of think that he dies. There's a longer piece there we don't have to go into, but he kind of comes back over a signal, a transmission, and he says, I'm back on the air. He's like, got some new friends down here, and the friends thing, man, like we can all get along, like all this, together, like all that shit speaks deeply to me. I love it. It's like, for me, the point of Coffee was, I love how you described it too, because it's like he was this cautionary tale. Like if we just like assume the worst and assume, we have to destroy the aliens or they're going to destroy us. We have to strike first. Like,
But
no.
they don't understand that. First of all, John, I love that because you're tying the two pieces together, meaning at the end, you have the little alien creature that, talks to the people and comes and makes contact. And then you have like the alien mothership, which floats aircraft carrier, right? It picks it up out of
right,
the water.
exactly. Yeah.
So there would have been no solution on the level of consciousness. They would have shot themselves in the foot, as it were, right? If you set off a nuke to try to kill this alien, it's kind of implied, I think, that they're friendly, but I guess it's also implied that they could have, come up and just like, let's just destroy all these people.
Yeah. Mars Attacks, right? They show up, they're friendly, and then everything, it's been a while since I've seen that, but that's when we're like, oh, their aliens are bad. Okay. I can't remember if the humans provoke them in that movie or not, but anyway, like.
Well, let's just look at any superior technical civilization or culture dealing with a more primitive technical culture. Usually it doesn't go well for the primitives. Usually they get the short end of the stick. But imagine if, through the act of friendship or through the act of, it's presumably these aliens are just underwater, just chilling. They don't mean anybody any harm. They're just all left alone, and they just never make contact because we're not at the bottom of the ocean. But if you make contact and you're like friendly with them as opposed to like trying to kill them, I think the assumption is, you can have some sort of a relationship. Anyway, it would have been a poor strategy to do a first strike with a mini nuke on this alien civilization that is presumably far in advance of humans.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. So I still want to try to get through the cable guy thing here. I think I could do it actually pretty quickly. And it's there's similar themes here. But what is the tie-in? We didn't really do the tie-in from Fight Club to the Abyss directly. I'll just give my tie-in, my little clever tie-in between the Abyss and the cable guy. And then, maybe I can read through the ChatGPT things also a little bit later, like, because I like this idea that we can, weave the themes of the movies together and see the commonalities beyond that. They're all have this duality of mind thing. What are some other fun, quirky things? So for me, the cable guy tie-in with the Abyss is, oh, by the way, the cable guy, came out in 1996. Ben Stiller directed it. I didn't know he was. He's fantastic. He also does the show Severance. I think he created it, maybe wrote, maybe directed on Apple TV. It's a fantastic show. But Jim Carrey at his finest. He acts with a lisp the whole time until one scene where he doesn't, and then it comes right back into it. Anyway, so what is the tie-in though between the Abyss and the cable guy? So the Abyss has that scene with Bud and Lindsay in the submarine in the little mini sub where they're both gonna die unless somebody does something, right? just like the medieval times scene in the cable guy when they get pulled in to do the battle. Jim Carrey goes, "It appears we're going to do battle, Steven." And then they're circling each other and they're all in full medieval armor, and Chip is the character that Jim Carrey plays. He goes, "This is like when Spock had to fight Kirk in Star Trek. Best friends forced to do battle." He starts doing the din 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 din. It's hilarious. It comes in with the music. It's so well done. But he says if we don't battle to the death, they will kill us both. So that's the tie-in. If they don't do anything, they'll both die. Although they're not trying to both survive either in the medieval times scene. So that's my fun little tie-in. But anyway, as far as like the duality of mind stuff, in my view, like the cable guy is all about control and who's in control. And from the very beginning, Chip, the cable guy, is in control. The scene when he comes in to install the cable, by the way, there's like a sexual theme throughout the whole movie. I don't know exactly what it means or what I think it means, but it's there. It's like very, like he's trying to find like the perfect spot to drill the hole to bring the cable in or whatever. And next time you guys watch it, you'll be like, oh man, do you remember? I guess I should say that. Do you remember from last time you saw it, like how sexual it is?
No.
Yeah. When next time you watch it, you'll be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I didn't pick up on this when I was a kid." Because it's like, it's very
Filled
like
with
almost
innuendo.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, and just like the way that Jim Carrey's acting. So there's this point though where he's actually drilling, and it's just very like but what I took out of it this time was like he's asserting his like dominance, his control. He's like, I can do whatever I want because I'm in control here. And I think that's kind of the theme, is that he's in control the whole time. He's the subconscious. Steven, who's played by Matthew Broderick, he's the conscious mind. He thinks he's in control, but he's not. He's not at all. And there's the point where, Chip just wants to be his friend. He had this, there's a couple flashbacks. He had this kind of traumatic childhood of not having a parent around. There's a scene where he's like telling his mom he's a kid, and he's like, "When am I going to get a brother? You said I'd get a brother to play with." And the mom's like, "That's why I got to go to happy hour." But she's like, but she says, like, just sit there in front of Mr. Babysitter. Like, who's Mr. Babysitter? The TV. So he's like raised by the TV. He says in the end, he's like, "I am the lost Cunningham. I learned the facts of life from watching the facts of life." So the TV is like his father figure. They both, Chip and Steven, have like a quick moment that they both didn't have great childhoods. They didn't have great father figures, and in fact, I think there's a sub theme here I won't go into, but there's the Sam and Stan Sweet murder trial thing. They were child actors, and they're played by Ben Stiller, not as children, but it's like a real life story that's happening in the background every so often. There's like 6 times that it just comes up, that this trial, that like Sam murdered his brother Stan, and now it's this big like spectacle of a trial. I think maybe there's some possibility that like Chip and Steven are like the children of these guys, but that's like fringe theory stuff that I just thought might have been there. But back to the duality of mind thing. Chip, he just wants a friend, and there's a moment where Steven just says like, "I don't have any room in my life for a new friend." And Chip's like, "What are you saying?" And he's like, "I don't want to be your friend." And then all hell breaks loose. Like Chip's like, "But I'm in control, and you're gonna pay now." And he ends up getting Steven arrested. He's in jail. He teaches him a lesson. He says like, "I can be your best friend or your worst enemy. You seem to prefer the latter." He's just unleashing like all this like, and no, everybody else, by the way, is a preferred customer. They're friends with Chip. Steven is kind of the only one that seems to see that Chip is like ruining his life now. Everybody else like is a big fan of Chip. So this all kind of like culminates at the end here. By the way, this happens. There's a monologue that happens twice. It's in the beginning when Chip takes Steven out to see this big satellite where all this magic happens of like cable TV, right? He takes him to this satellite, and I'm gonna read what he says because it's really brilliant. Because again, this came out in '96, so think about that. But he says, Chip is standing on the satellite dish, and he says, "The future is now. Soon every American home will integrate their television, phone, and computer." He was saying this in '96. He says, "You'll be able to visit the Louvre on one channel or watch female mud wrestling on another. You can do your shopping at home or play Mortal Kombat with a friend in Vietnam." But like, I thought that was so prophetic because in '96 I wasn't thinking about like specifically that line about integrate your television, phone, and computer. And that's exactly what happened. Like, and we can do our shopping from home. Like, I thought that was like really neat to see that in a movie from 1996. But anyway, all this comes together at the end when after all hell breaks loose, and Chip takes Steven's girlfriend Robin up to the satellite, and he's sort of holding her hostage because at this point Steven knows like Chip doesn't actually work for the cable company, and in fact, all the names he's given him are like characters from other TV shows that that Chip grew up with. Nobody actually knows what his real name is. He was fired from cable companies. Like he's kind of a loose cannon, right? But in the theme of the movie, the storyline, I think all that doesn't matter because the theme is that he is the subconscious and he is in control because he does orchestrate everything. He's like kind of a master manipulator. He convinces Steven to do all these things just because of the way he, phrases things and the questions he asks, or maybe he like, oh, I'm sorry, I went too far. I'm sorry, I went too far. And Steven's like, oh, no, it's okay. He's like, okay, cool. Then let's do this. I mean, at the medieval time scene, like Steven tries to say a few times, like, hey, I don't really, but, something comes up and interrupts him every time. All these things are very like laid out and orchestrated by the subconscious because he's in control is how I get this from. And so, um, the climax kind of at the end, Chip he realizes his mission is to, he doesn't realize it until he's there, but he's at this satellite dish with Robin. It's like raining. He's kind of like got her held hostage or whatever, but he realizes what he has to do. And I'm just going to read what I wrote here. Again, this was kind of stream of consciousness. I did go back and kind of clean it up, but I think I did an okay job here. But I'm curious what you guys will think of this. So he's standing up at the top of this satellite dish. They climb up to the top. He says at a point, he's like, what the problem with real life is there's no danger music. There's no soundtrack. And he goes back to like, mouth riffing danger music. I agree with that sometimes. When I watch a movie, sometimes I see a scene and I'm like, yeah, of course, like that would happen. There's the music. Like, how would it not happen? Anyway, so, but Chip says this thing. He's like, you got to admit, this is a pretty cool place for an ending. It's like that movie Goldeneye. And Steven says, no, it's not. It's not like anything. This isn't a movie. This is reality. And I honed in on that line. It's not like anything. It's not like anything. And I started thinking like maybe that was representing, like Steven is representing this maybe objective worldview where we all assume our thought and behavior patterns are the same, maybe like simile and metaphor aren't real. Our experiences aren't like something else. They're common. Everyone experiences them, maybe. It's not like anything, he says. So maybe that implies that real life and art don't belong together in the process of experiencing reality. Or on a deeper level, and this is the closing argument. This was my PCU moment where I was like, the Kane Hackman theory, like, this is my thesis, man. I can stop watching TV. So it's like this closing argument here that like Steven represents the belief that he's in control. He's the conscious mind. He thinks he's in control, but he isn't. Chip has been running the show the whole time. From that, there's a shower scene in the very beginning. Do you guys remember the shower scene? Like, Steven is waiting for Chip to come to show up and install the cable, and he's like hours late, and finally he gets in the shower. And the moment that Steven starts washing his hair and there's just like lather, building up in his head, knock, 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 ding dong, cable guy, and it's just like so absurd and over the top, cable guy, and he's like, hold on a minute, he got to, rinse his hair out and towel off and come, and Steven walks up to the door, kind of looks through the people, and that's when Chip starts walking away. I mean, it's just like he was like orchestrating all of this stuff. So from the shower scene, Chip is in control this whole time. Okay, so like so Steven, right? Steven has to mature or grow or evolve to accept the truth that he is not in control. Instead, the subconscious is what's actually controlling thing, and that's represented by Chip. And so what Chip says at the end, he's like, that's what I have to do. What does he have to do? He has to like sacrifice himself by jumping into the satellite and destroying the satellite and disrupting the signal. Do you guys remember how this all comes together? The way he says it is he does jump, and then Steven leaps and grabs his arm, and he's, it's just like really dramatic, like he's holding onto him, saving his life. But Chip like pulls himself up and he says, don't you understand? Somebody has to kill the babysitter. And what he's saying is like someone has to destroy this like TV thing happening that's like, because this, and it ties back to the Sam and Stan Sweet case, because every time they kind of go back to it, I think what they're alluding to is it's kind of representing this extreme end of the spectrum where all of society is obsessed with the experiences of others instead of having their own experiences, Like we're all Stevens. We all think we're in control. We're all caught up in this common hallucination about what's real. But real is inherently subjective. Real is each person's own experiences. Simile and metaphor is the only way we can appreciate others' experiences. Like at best, we just have a few moments of common coincidences of feeling and thinking and receiving, processing, experiencing signals in our brains, all these like sensory information, just like both the five traditional senses and the non-traditional senses, experiencing thoughts of self, thoughts of others, thoughts of hunger, the whole idea of interoception, the feeling of what's happening inside our body. These are all like sensory experiences. So we have a few moments where like these things really do seem the same as others, but the only way we do that is through simile and metaphor. So what I think the sacrifice of Chip here is to kill the babysitter, of being consumed by a worldview that's like maybe inaccurate, but I'm not hip on that world. So maybe a worldview that's exclusionary, back to the, it's not like anything. The argument Stephen's making is this is real life and Chip doesn't know what's going on, but that's not true. Remember, Chip is the subconscious. He's in control. He knows exactly what's going on and he has to kill the babysitter.
I think that's brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love it. But let me dovetail off of a couple of things here. First, the idea that simile and metaphor versus, saying it's not like anything. I think that goes to the two types of memory, and we were talking about this in the pregame conversation, where semantic memory is a form of conscious memory, and episodic memory is a form of subconscious memory. So episodic is just what it feels like, the everything that's around you, the contextualized learning. That's going to be your subconscious's imprint or memory. And then you have a conscious memory, which is going to be based on words. And specifically, we can talk about, words, symbols for emotions or names, labels, facts. But it's not the same thing as having an episode. So to bring these two things together, memory games, people who are memory athletes, they create, say, a memory palace, an actual visionary thing that they know very well. Let's just say it's your childhood home, and you just have a visualization, and you know what it feels like to walk down the hall. You know which board squeaks. You know where all the pictures are. You know what happens when you turn right at the end of the hall, and what it looks like to go into your living room, and all these things. It feels like you could walk through this place, like you can smell it, you can visualize it. Or you can have a name for a thing. Like, let's just say the deck of cards. Each card is an ace of spades or a two of clubs or a three of diamonds or whatever. So you have a label for these things. The way these memory athletes work is they will place the cards along a path. So they will integrate the label or the semantic memory into the episodic memory or the house or the palace. And so this is where I think it's very interesting. Your take on this, John, is that the subconscious character Chip is having his own struggle with television. And here's why. Television, and let's say this is pre-smartphone, but let's just say smartphones. They are taking the place of your imagination. They are creating the images. They are creating the sounds. They are creating the experiences, the metaphor and simile, if you will. They're creating these things for you in your hand. So you have the benefit of full consciousness, like you get to choose what comes next. You get to be consciously labeling and thumbs up, thumbs down, or heart this thing or whatever. But in reality, you're just experiencing a stream of TikTok videos or Facebook posts or whatever, YouTube videos. And so you are being manipulated by your babysitter. Your babysitter is your phone. Your babysitter is the TV. But the reason why it's so powerful, back to your point, John, is because it's taking the place of your subconscious, the generative side that you're supposed to be perceiving. So your consciousness is not able to create these images in your mind's eye, the dream, the visions, the dreams. It's watching. So you have one side of you that's creating and one side that's watching what you created. And so when you take the place of the subconscious generative side and you replace it with a television or a smartphone, then you're now pure consciousness. So go back to the tie-in. Let's go tie these three examples together. So you would have Tyler Durden is the subconscious, but he's paired with the narrator. So they're two halves of the same whole.
Mm-hmm.
In the abyss, you have the subconscious, which is Lindsay, tied to Bud, which is the consciousness, but they're two halves of the same whole. Then you could have the two characters of Cable Guy, one the subconscious, one the conscious, but they're two halves of the same whole. And what you end up with, though, is in Fight Club, let's just say it is the corporate boss, or one of the examples. I'm trying to think of a good example of somebody who's just like the pure I like the corporate boss, the guy who is running the office of insurance adjuster.
Yeah. And then Edward Norton kicks his own ass in front of him.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like a prototypical suit,
Yeah.
He's just got this thing. He's just like a normal guy, by the way. He doesn't seem evil. He doesn't seem terrible.
Right.
But he's just like a normal guy. But he's like a single serving guy, or whatever you want to call it, veneer guy. And then you have Coffee, who's like just pure consciousness. He's just trying to do his job, just following orders. Huge consequences, but he's just following orders, right? Just like the suit is an insurance guy, but he will not correct the problem. He will maintain the fact that it's more cost effective just to settle the lawsuit than to do a recall, which means downstream there's going to be a family of four that's going to burn to death in the back of a station wagon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know enough. I apologize about the Cable Guy of
what the corresponding thing would be.
Yeah, I did watch it, but it's been probably since '96. I'll be honest. I mean, I do remember it as a kid. But so, what do you think then? Is there a corresponding layer, or is it just Chip pre and post babysitter, if you will?
Yeah, maybe the baby, like the idea of the obsession over this trial, this murder trial, because it made me think. This would have been before. Wait, no, the OJ thing was '94. So it could have been like an allusion to that, like how it just seemed to be
there was a trial. There was a trial with two kids who killed
the Menendez. Yeah, it was the Menendez brothers.
Yeah. Is that what it's alluding
to? Because it's brothers maybe, but I think there's enough differences because they both conspired. Well, I from what I remember from the Time Suck episode of that, maybe there was one that was more in the driver's seat, but I think they both kind of conspired to kill their parents. And this,
what was the timeline? Did it happen before the movie or not? I would just leave
before Cable Guy. That's a good question.
I think it did, but I could be wrong. I want to say my mind's eye is the Menendez brother trial was like VCR time and grainy picture time and like cathode ray tube time.
Yeah, that would speak to my recollection.
Yeah, if it was pre, because I do think that was one of the very first like suck you in real life. What do you want to call it? Like real life dramas that they put on TV. That was essentially playing off of the pain of a tragedy to get ratings, and then to the point of the brothers, they were calculatedly murderous of the parents so that they could collect the money. I believe. If I wasn't very deep into it.
Yeah, it looks like they killed their parents in 1989, so definitely before '96. So yeah, it could have alluded to that. But I think the theme in Cable Guy is just the obsession over following every but just following it so closely. And this is possibly only my supposition and only this in my head, but I think it's suggesting that at the extreme level, like it's not worth sacrificing your own experiences just to be so absorbed in the experiences of others, I think is the theme I was getting there. Because, one of the clips, again, there's like 6 times that it's really well done, by the way. It just kind of weaves in and out of the storyline. Every time it comes in, it's because there's a shot of a TV and someone's maybe flipping through TV channels and it just,
Totally.
stops on it, or it just happens to be on. But anyway, one of those times is you don't have to wait for the verdict because you can see it all on the made-for-TV movie Brother, Sweet Brother, starring Eric Roberts as Sam and Stam Sweet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they made a movie out of it. It's like,
Before the actual movie.
yeah, because
Before
it's
the
just
trial
like,
was done. Yeah.
right. So I think that was speaking to like an obsessive like excess, and specifically like ignoring our own experiences and trying to replace those by just observing experiences of others, maybe.
No,
And I
I
think
think
that's why Chip's like, I gotta stop this.
no, I think
I gotta
that's
kill the
very,
babysitter.
very, very prophetic, like you said, and I think a powerful symbolic representation of what is happening. Meaning, your subconscious is the projectionist. It is so. Back to this tie-in. I love this tie-in, by the way. Cable guy is this visual stimulation, this fact that you're consuming a visual, sensory, and auditory sensory um, signal.
Hmm.
So what is happening in Fight Club is the projectionist is cutting in a signal into your feed. So you are consuming this feed thinking I can just consume this at no cost, or I can just pay attention to this thing and I'm free to do whatever I want. But the human nature is the person who is creating the show or creating the clips, creating, the projectionist, if you will, is the one that's really in control. And everything else is just narrating after the fact the decision that was made based off of a cue given to you by TV or your phone or the projectionist. And I think that's fundamentally the concept here is you have to, if you're unaware that this thing is happening, if you're unaware that there is a signal, if you think you're watching, but you are in control to formulate your own opinion, let's just say after the fact, that's a blind spot. And using that term purposefully here, you have a blind spot thinking you are driving, you are in control, you have free will. If all that has been fed into your brain is sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, that's going to influence everything. That is going to be, learning about, life, so to speak, from your babysitter, your TV, which has, or let's just say modern times. I think it's so much more powerful now where there's an algorithm, meaning it's adaptive to you individually. So in the past, cable guys is mass consumption, projectionist, mass consumption. They put a single signal out there and there's an audience, an entire audience uptaking this, and you have a shared experience and you can talk about these references and, have a group dynamic of media in general. Whereas now you could say John's very up on the news and Tucker's up on the news and Bob's up on the news, but we're all getting different news feeds. We could have an argument based on what we think is fact, but it's all a function of your news feed, John, is customized to your preferences, and Tucker likewise, and mine likewise. So we're all going to be arguing in good faith, so to speak, what truth is, objective truth, factual truth. But what's really happening is it's a function of what you're clicking on or what you're liking versus disliking. So that's where we're at today is the algorithm is customizing individual curation, pushing or pulling you in a direction. And I'm not even saying like in a strategically manipulative way. I'm just saying as a function of what you have clicked on or thumbs up, thumbs down on, or whatever, it changes your next experience. And on it goes, because there's an infinite amount of content to put in front of finite, attention span. So I think it's very, very, very interesting in that is technically speaking what I'm conceptually visualizing the subconscious to do is it is being trained through trial and error, lack of a better term, the things that you pay attention to, going back to this idea of like a snow-covered hill, the things you create channels in, it gets very good at predicting what comes next based on those pathways.
Right.
And it's so hard to break out of that, not because we don't have, willpower, but we're not the ones creating the idea of what to do next. You have to say, no, I want something else, which is extremely difficult to do, especially when you get into an addictive or obsessive, compulsive, habitual pattern of behavior. It's damn near impossible if you don't know what's happening. And if you can't say, I have to reset myself, I have to actively look for the signal to see what is causing me to choose these paths. And then when I see that thing, actively say, no, I want another one.
Yeah. And I think there's a possibility, right, to like through doing that and just through, I don't know exactly how to frame it, but we can influence that model, Maybe it is just from saying no, give me another. But we can influence it, don't you agree? Like we can influence
You have to pay
the
attention
knobs
to
and
what,
the settings in that model.
this is what you have to do. You have to actively wait the next thing that you want to come through. So imagine like you've overfit, going back to that podcast about memory on Lex Friedman, where the guy was saying, look, with your memory, you can overfit your model. You can become too tightly bound to a certain reinforcement learning pattern. So it's not going to be, it's going to be, you're going to get a proper answer, but only in a very tight window. It's not going to be extrapolated to all other things. So you have to reset this. You have to add new training data in intentionally. You have to intentionally add new training data and then label it as such of what you want it to be now. And the hard part is breaking out of the routine. I mean, we should all say, look, especially midlife people, midlife, we still have, like, if you're 95, 100 years old, it's probably not really worth, retraining your model. It's just going to be so much effort. There's so much accumulated data in there that to recondition yourself for what time you have left, presumably, it's going to be a Herculean chore. So it's nice when you're young to get started on the right path because you have such a long runway of experience that you will get to, use your training for. Midlife is probably like the sweet spot. You have just enough time to learn what you really want to do and how it's done. But on the flip side, you've built some pretty deep channels in your behavior pattern.
Right.
So being able to say, look, I'm not going to be able to make a choice when it happens. Like when something happens, somebody comes up to me and puts me on the spot to do something or challenges me or gets me in an uncomfortable state. And let's say my pattern of behavior is to become combative, aggressive, emotionally charged, physically, fighting somebody, whatever. You're not going to probably be able to change that if it happens to you in the real world. Like if somebody just comes up to you in the real world and they put something on you and you're, let's just say, someone who flies off the handle, gets aggressive, starts a fight, whatever. Probably not going to be able to change that.
Ever? Or you just think?
You're not going to be able to say, next time someone comes up to me, I'm not going to see red. I'm not going to have adrenaline. I'm not going to start shaking. I'm not going to ball up my hands into fists. I'm not going to puff up my chest. I'm not going to get right in this guy's face, nose to nose. I'm not going to cuss out his mom. No, you're going to fucking do all that shit because you're going to feel like fight or flight right now.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do is go back to the projectionist level and retrain your model that is not the solution here. And there's probably many different ways you could do this, but it's going to take a lot of effort because presumably the person who's doing that at, say, 30 years old has 25 years of history of feeling a certain kind of way when they're when someone comes up to them in an aggressive manner. And so my point is, people think, I'm not going to go have a drink today. I promised my wife, I promised my mom, promised my kids, I'm done. I won't drink again because I know after I drink, I don't go to work the next day. Then when I don't go to work, my wife bitches at me, and then I get mad at her and I yell at the kids. Then I go drive and I get pulled over. And right, like all these things, and they know for a fact that this is not good for them. And it definitely doesn't balance the benefit of having a couple drinks, let's say 10, after work because he had a bad day, is not going to counterbalance all the downstream negatives. But they're going to say, you know what? I have 10 drinks after work because I hate my job. And I hate my job because I didn't finish college. I didn't finish college because my parents were assholes and didn't pay for me. And my parents were assholes and they didn't pay for me because the economy is bad. And the economy was bad because we were in a war. Yeah. We were in a war because these Muslims attacked what I'm saying? Like, it's just, you get into this endless narration that has nothing to do with reweighting your model to say, look, what I want the projectionist to give me is not the pitcher of beer at the end of the bar, but that's what's happening. It floods my sight, it floods my smell, it floods my ears.
Yeah.
That all I need to do at the end of the day, I'm hanging on by my fingertips to get through the fucking day at work. All I can see is the pitchers of beer at the bar. And I know if I go do this thing, at least for those 2, 3, 4 hours, I'll be okay. I know if I can just get to the bar, even though I told my wife I'd come home.
Yeah.
Even though I told my kids I'm going to play ball with you tonight. And all the other shit we just said is going to happen downstream. The only thing that is in my mind is that pitcher of beer and the smell and the sound of all the people I know at the bar. And it'll just be okay for a little while. So that's the level. That's the point of there's no free will. You have to choose, I want another movie. But you have to have another movie in the catalog. You have to create something else with your attention span, your intention. You have to program, reweight your model, get something else predictive. I don't know what it could be in this example. Let's say it's going to the gym. Let's just keep it simple. Let's say it's going to the gym. Instead of going to the bar, I'm going to go to the gym. So, by the way, have you guys ever seen this on Reddit or social media, where it shows a guy, I think he's maybe Vietnamese or Thai or something like that. And it shows him, it's like this really funny clip. It's like a 60-second clip. It's just this guy, he drinks, he has a bad day. He drinks, he has a bad day. He drinks, he has a bad day. He's like a poor guy, super poor. And it's like, stop drinking, go work the field. Stop drinking, pay the landlord on time. Stop drinking, get your farm going. Stop drinking. Do you know what I'm talking about? Are you guys familiar with it?
No, I don't think I've seen it.
Well, it's such a fast cut. It's a hilarious thing, but it's so true, where there's this guy, he's going back and forth between, when you drink, you know what happens next. It's always the same thing. You drink, you get drunk, you pay for it the next day. Whereas the other side was, I don't drink, I take the time and the money I would have used for drinking, I do this little thing. But what he shows is in this clip, and it's like I said, like a minute or two, at the end, he becomes like a powerful person in his village. He becomes like actually a good person, somebody he wants to be like, that he's essentially drinking to not think about why he's not a good person. The point is, these tiny little investments of not doing this one repetitious behavior that is injurious to himself and his community, which always ends the same way, where he drinks, he gets drunk, and he's not a good person. It accumulates on the other side of, I don't drink, I do this little thing, and I take one more step forward in the direction I want to go. But my point is, you have to get a endpoint. You have to get a revolution, a pattern built up. This is why it's so destructive to try to attempt this with free will. You're trying to take one step at a time, from here to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. What you really need to do is see an endpoint, have a dream of some goal, and work backwards from that. That's what your subconscious wants to do. But it's insanely difficult to get that first revolution. It's insanely difficult to get that level of reinforcement. We're talking Pavlovian conditioning is what I'm saying.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So to get out of this thing of where I'm going to fight you, if you get within 6 inches of my face, I'm going to fuck you up. Okay. You have to kind of do this chicken and egg thing where I have to get past it at least one time, no matter what. I have to break this cycle at least one time. I have to figure out, how am I going to do this thing? Maybe I have a friend and I say, sometime this next week, I'm just bullshitting right now. Sometime this next week, I want you to come up and get aggressive with me. But I know it's you, and I know you're going to just be doing this, but I got to feel what it feels like to not take the bait. I got to feel like what it feels like to take this baby step and do something different, break my conditioning. And so this is cognitive behavioral therapy, essentially, is you got to figure out a tiny little way, thin edge of the wedge, to get a revolution in going opposite from what you normally do.
Yeah, break the cycle. Right?
Break the cycle. Thank you, John. Break the cycle. Then, as you are retraining your model, you will now get like a little feeling of like, maybe I don't have to do this thing. Like maybe I get 2 frames in my projectionist. Maybe one frame is punch the guy in the face, and the other frame is just sit down. And maybe it's 10-1, where I get 10 frames, I'm going to smash this guy, and one frame is I'm just going to sit down and just mind my business. And if you can ever get that one where you didn't smash that guy, maybe that's where I go to the gym instead. Maybe I realize whenever I go to the bar, somebody's going to come up to me because they're drunk and I'm drunk.
All right.
So instead of doing that, maybe I just go to the gym, and maybe I don't get big and strong the first day, but I go home on time. I'm not drunk or hungover. I don't yell at my kids. I don't storm off in a huff because my wife yelled at me. I don't get pulled over by the cops. Maybe I just wake up the next day and I feel okay. Well, shit, let me try it again. Well, now maybe I go to the gym and I meet a friend, and he shares his story with me. And I tell him I'm in the same boat. We start helping each other. And just little by little. But it can't ever be, and this is the problem with all of us, I think. We think the choice is made at the point when the guy walks up on you, or the choice is made when I go home after drinking tonight, I'm not going to yell at my wife. And I'm telling you, that's not the case. The choice is made by your subconscious when you're in the boat of, I've got this job that I hate, and that's a fair play. I mean, people can't just extract themselves from that. But what do you do next? How do you deal with that problem? And of course, trying to change jobs or change careers or, start over in life, it's not an easy thing. But deciding what to do to cope with that, that's something that is manageable and under one's control. A lot of it, I believe, this is me personally speaking now, is just trying to numb the pain. Like it's not a solution. It's just trying to say, look, it hurts so much. It hurts so much. And I know it's going to suck the next day because I'm going to pay for it. I get it. But if I can just get rid of this pain right now, if I can just get rid of the thoughts in my head right now, I'm willing to do it. And you'll lie to yourself, by the way. You'll lie to yourself why you're doing it. But what's happening is your body has modeled, okay, I can get peace. I can get bliss from just being oblivious to all reality for about 3-4 hours. I can do that thing. And that's real, by the way. Drugs work. Alcohol works. It really does. It will send you to this place where you can get rid of that feeling for a little bit. And so your body adapts Pavlovian style to this conditioning where it knows there is a path forward. It knows there's a solution. The hardest part is to pull this abyss move off and realize, against all odds and everybody reasonable telling you, I got to die and be pulled over to this place and brought back to life. The reason why it's so hard is because you can't loop that thing. But that's what you got to do, is you have to have at least one time where you're going to take this leap of faith. Trust that if I do this thing, it'll work without any evidence that it's going to happen. That's the hardest part. Because the drugs work 100% of the time. You do that thing, you're going to feel that way 100% of the time, and your body knows that. And so your projectionist is just going to cut frame after frame after frame after frame of that thing that knows it's going to work. So being able to rewrite that story probably takes a lot of baby steps, and it takes consciously understanding what is happening, consciously understanding that you are incapable of formulating a different path forward when you're in that situation, because the only movie your subconscious is going to hand you is the same one over and over and over again.
I wonder if that could be a good topic someday of just us sharing examples of where we've done that or got close to doing that, or, maybe failed at doing that. You know what I mean? That could be interesting to explore one day.
I still think the lead off to the LGBTQ series is my holy grail of having this understanding of what comes next. And what I mean is, John, and you could say it better than I can, I'm sure, going through the feeling.
Yeah, and not letting it like control my actions, just recognizing that was happening. But I could control that. I could control my mouth. I could keep it shut. Because I asked the question, like, tell me more, and then I shut up, and then I
But you couldn't control how it feels, though, right? You had to go through that unpleasantness, that terrible feeling. You had to experience it. And I'm telling you, most people will opt out. They'll opt into what they know is true, which I can feel better right now if I do this thing, or at least I could vent the bad feeling onto somebody else, or I can mask it and cover it up. But what I'm saying is, what's so hard is to go through the bad feeling.
Yeah.
But I only believe, and you tell me if I'm wrong, that you can do that if you understand why that feeling is there and what it's trying to do. And that's not your intention.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe. That was my experience. Yeah. That it, it was like something I'd been saying, like, I wanted to have a conversation with somebody. I'd been saying, like, somebody who disagrees on this thing that seems so obvious to me or whatever. I want to, like, so did I manifest it? Maybe not, but I was priming myself for it. I think I was preparing myself to go through that feeling because I said I wanted it,
Well, that's my point, is you're not going to be able to choose it in the moment. You have to program your subconscious model way in advance and put effort into your attention. Your attention is on difference. Like, I want to hear another point of view, and I want it to be honest. I don't want a straw man. I want to steel man the opposition. I want to learn and grow. And I know that a strong feeling is associated with this idea. And those strong feelings oftentimes motivate a direction of a conversation such that it devolves into an argument, into a fight, into combat, into all these things that are not what we're trying to do. And so most people, I would say, are more interested in how they're correct and how they're high and mighty.
Yeah, there's a primal instinct maybe, but there is something that we want to win. We want to be the winner. We want to, we don't want to admit defeat. We don't want to admit we were wrong. We want to be the one who was right. This could go on a long time, I'm realizing.
It should.
And it should. Hey, is that what you said, Tucker? It should.
I meant to say could, but the projectionist had a different idea.
I know, right? That's so fun. I do. Do you mind if I just read through the ChatGPT responses of how these movies are tied together, and then we call it on this episode?
Fun. Yeah, let's hear.
So I was interested in an obscure tie-in, because there's these obvious things we talk through, but I was curious, like, what are sort of like the medieval times thing, something that's maybe quirky or, anyway. So the question I asked was, can you think of an obscure correlation between the Cable Guy and Fight Club? And its response is, an interesting and obscure correlation between the Cable Guy and Fight Club is the theme of alienation and destructive consequences of modern consumer culture, though they approach it in very different ways. In The Cable Guy, Jim Carrey's character Chip Douglas represents a man who's become dangerously obsessed with television, a symbol of the shallow, consumer-driven world. His lack of real human connection leads to his increasingly erratic and intrusive behavior, which eventually spirals out of control. The film subtly critiques the way media consumption can distort reality and relationships. Although I would say, like, he has human connection with all of his preferred customers. So, anyway, in Fight Club, back to ChatGPT, in Fight Club, Edward Norton's narrator character and Brad Pitt's Tyler Durden confront similar themes of modern malaise and alienation, but through the lens of materialism and masculinity. Tyler Durden's anarchic philosophy is a reaction against the suffocating nature of consumer culture, pushing the narrator to reject societal norms in increasingly extreme ways. Both films, while vastly different in tone and style, explore the dark side of modern life, where the characters' disconnection from genuine human experiences leads them down destructive paths. The Cable Guy uses dark comedy to explore this idea, while Fight Club uses psychological drama and violence, but both ultimately question the impact of a society obsessed with consumption and media on the individual psyche. So, it's still pretty impressive, like how it just spits that out in, less than a second. There's some interesting things there. It's interesting that, actually, I don't want to get into that. I want to keep going here because we're like so we're so over the time here. So what about an obscure correlation between The Abyss and The Cable Guy? So an obscure correlation between The Abyss and The Cable Guy can be found in their exploration of isolation and the psychological effects it has on the characters, as well as their use of technology as a catalyst for these effects. In The Abyss, the characters are isolated deep underwater, cut off from the world, and forced to confront their fears and insecurities. The deep sea environment becomes a psychological pressure cooker, amplifying the characters' internal conflicts. The alien technology they encounter becomes a focal point for these tensions, forcing them to deal with their past traumas and ultimately leading to a deeper understanding of themselves. Similarly, in The Cable Guy, Chip Douglas is a character deeply isolated from society, but instead of being physically isolated like the characters in The Abyss, his isolation is social and psychological. Chip's obsession with television and technology, a medium that both connects and isolates, leads him to create artificial relationships with people with disastrous consequences. Okay, baby. His character's psychological breakdown mirrors the way isolation can distort reality and human behavior. Both films use the concept of isolation, whether psychological or physical, and the intrusion of technology as a means to explore deeper issues of human connection, sanity, and the consequences of losing touch with reality. While one is a sci-fi thriller and the other a dark comedy, they both suggest that isolation combined with technology can lead to a dangerous detachment from the real world. Interesting. And then finally, and what about an obscure correlation between Fight Club and The Abyss? An obscure correlation between Fight Club, which, by the way, I don't know if these are obscure correlations, ChatGPT, but anyway, an obscure correlation between Fight Club and The Abyss can be found in their exploration of the confrontation with one's own inner darkness and the transformative potential of extreme high-stress environments. In The Abyss, the characters are pushed to their psychological limits by the extreme underwater environment, which serves as a metaphorical and literal abyss. As they descend deeper into the ocean, they also delve into the depths of their own fears and unresolved conflicts. The high-stress situation forces them to confront these issues head-on, leading to personal transformation and a deeper understanding of themselves and their relationships. The encounter with the alien intelligence in The Abyss represents a moment of profound revelation and change, symbolizing a confrontation with the unknown aspects of themselves. In Fight Club, the narrator undergoes a similar psychological descent though his abyss is internal rather than physical. Nicely done. His disillusionment with consumer culture and his own life leads him to create Tyler Durden, a manifestation of his repressed desires and darker impulses. The underground Fight Club serves as a crucible for the narrator's transformation, pushing him to explore and eventually confront the more destructive parts of his psyche. The process of hitting rock bottom is crucial for his eventual self-realization, much like the characters in The Abyss must go through the literal and figurative depths to emerge transformed. Both films explore how extreme conditions, whether a deep sea environment or a psychological breakdown, force characters to face their inner darkness. The Abyss, in both cases, becomes a place of confrontation and potential rebirth, where characters either succumb to or transcend their fears and unresolved inner conflicts. Despite their different settings and genres, both Fight Club and The Abyss suggest that true transformation often requires a perilous journey into the depths of one's own mind or situation.
Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I haven't played around Chat GPT in a while. I would say that's quite impressive in my opinion.
Yeah, recognizing like the prompt is the whole thing, man. And like, I said an obscure correlation. I think for the next time we do this, I'm more interested in like unconventional, like, not maybe theme correlations, but specific, like between the cable guy and the wall. The cable guy has an intense toilet acting scene, and so does the wall. Boom. Like little things like that. Anyway. But yeah,
I think that has to. I mean, obviously, Chat GPT is not watching. I'm doing air quotes the movie. It's digesting commentary about both movies.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Whatever's been written about them on the internet, etc., and been represented in a mathematical model.
Yeah.
No, anyway, I think it's quite good. I mean, it's quite good in spitting out a
thoughtful, and the words go together really well. It's like, yeah, it does a good job.
But here's my point. I don't know if any human ever did that comparison. So I'm sure there was many reviews on each one of those individually. So my level of wonder and amazement is that you can synthesize a whole new perspective by prompting it to compare two things that were perhaps never compared before.
Yeah, good point.
Okay.
All of a sudden, I'm thinking of like, how are blueberries and prairie dogs related? I don't know. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
I'm curious. Like that is a
yeah.
fascinating way that it's not just regurgitating the same thing over and over, is by prompting it to compare.
Yeah, and it's going to truly generate something. Yeah,
it could be. I mean, I think that's a very clever way to pull that into the podcast realm, where that's exactly what we're trying to do with human ingenuity and pattern recognition, because we're all trained, meaning we've all had a lifetime of cultural indoctrination and experiences that allow us to create synthetic ideas.
Right.
Hardly any of us are doing this without any sort of background. I mean, none of us are, is my point. So I think it's just a very interesting way to compare and contrast, different ways of comparing and contrasting. I think it's fascinating. I would definitely do that again.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Sweet. Well, yeah, we should wrap this up. So, great discussion, you guys. I don't know what we're going to do next time, but we can figure that out this week. But thank you for listening. If you want to get a hold of us, sendingpoets@gmail.com. And we'll leave you with a quote from someone named Tyler Durden. I don't know who that is, but no. But this is a good quote. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.